Good morning, everyone. I recently watched a video Chase put out about if he was retiring from competitive Splatoon or anything like that, or making YouTube content on it. I'm rambling a little bit, and this video isn't really about that, but it's more about one of the things that he mentioned in the video that I found interesting, which is one of the things that he said contributed to burning out of the game was the fact that Cooler was seen as a mandatory special, and how that, with all those different specials in the game, how it impacted the game that one of them was seen as often as it is, for as long as it has. And it got me thinking a little bit. Is it a problem that Cooler is mandatory right now? So, I think there's one question that I think is worth asking in order to, make the argument that Cooler being mandatory is healthy, which is, what would the game look like without Cooler? And it's a question that we really cannot answer for certain. It has been so long, and so much of the game has changed since crab meta. Obviously, before Cooler was really good, arguably the game wasn't in the greatest spot, right? I didn't mind crab meta, but I think the gameplay was very passive and defensive. Would it revert back to that without Attack the Cooler? I don't know. Those tools we have are very different. On the negative side, there's a lot of stalling and paint-heavy tools and specials that can get kills quite easily. On the positive half, specials also have good object shredding capabilities to stop things like Crab from sitting back and tanking. But I don't think we will ever really know. What I have been thinking about, though, is was the game's meta at a higher level designed around Cooler? And I know that's a weird question to ask, but let me bring this up, right? Ever since Tacticooler has been buffed, right? The special itself, not the weapons. Ever since the special has been buffed to being a quote-unquote mandatory special, which has existed for about 2 years now, they haven't nerfed it once. They haven't even tried. Not a slap on the wrist, nothing, outside of just how long it takes to get another Cooler. This is the only thing they've adjusted about Cooler negatively, is the output. They've balanced the points for special on Cooler weapons, and they changed the cooldown on it. That's it. That is the only thing they have tried to balance about the special, is just that. And I think that's kind of interesting, right? Because to me, when I saw this special, and everyone saw, oh, it's like S3's armor, right? I think Splatoon 2 was also designed around armor. I think that armor being good was always the plan, right? But it's more clear in this game's balance that I feel like, yes, Cooler being this good was the plan from the very beginning. And so, if the game is designed around it, which is my theory, right, then I think it's possible that, yeah, there would be a lot of problems if it wasn't, mandatory, or if not mandatory, if, really good, one of the best specials in the game. So, okay, let's run with that assumption, right, for a second here. Let's say that Cooler is integral to Splatoon 3's balance and long-term health over the end of its content cycle. If they want to end the game in a good spot, then Cooler has to be needed. Is there a larger problem at hand here? And I think there is. Because if I'm being honest, I don't mind the idea of Cooler being a mandatory special. It doesn't bother me personally. There's still 3 other special slots. There's still plenty of variety, and Cooler does impact the game positively. Whether it would actually be healthier or not without it is a gamble at the end of the day. And not one that I would feel comfortable taking, If I had the option to gut Tacticooler right now, I don't think I would do it, because I don't know what would end up being good, and I feel like the odds are it would end up being something worse. However, I do have a problem with this approach. If the devs really intended for Cooler to be this mandatory special, if Cooler was really designed around being a centerpiece of the game at a high level of play, what on earth are we doing with the balancing of all of these guns right here? What are we doing, right? That's my question, because I have 2 problems here. First off, there is not enough Cooler weapons in the game. There are some specials that have more weapons attached to them than Cooler. Why? If this was going to be a mandatory 1 out of 4 slot or near mandatory, why are there so few choices for it? We have 2 real backlines as Cooler weapons in this game. We have Rapid and Pen. That's it! Those are the only ones. That's a little insane to me. right? There's such a limited variety, and that's after we've gotten some third kits. This issue was far worse before. The larger problem I have, though, even outside of that, is the balance. If we're going to make Cooler this necessary option, then the balance of these weapons has to show that. We have to have a ton of different Cooler options, because if one special is mandatory, it's going to be really easy for one weapon to take over team comp building, which is exactly what's happened. Pencil's been really good for 2 years, and I understand the hesitancy to nerf Pencil because it is a very healthy weapon for the game. It's the same problem you run into with Cooler itself. So if we want to be careful on nerfing this and do it really slowly, even if I think they've done it too slowly, even with that logic, okay, sure. Why is this weapon still 210? Genuine question. Like, I get Try still gets some results. It even has some Area Cup wins, recently. Why is it 210? Does it need to be 210? We nerfed Edit, and it tanked off the face of the cliff, and we don't want to give it anything? Like, I get it's hard to buff, but nothing? Not like a tiny, maybe better fall-off damage, so it's more consistent at four-shotting? That's kind of a problem. Nothing? We don't want to make Rapid Pro cheaper for Cooler at all when that's its main problem. We don't want to buff Dynamo's pain. We don't want to do anything about H3's nerfs. Zap and Dapple I understand, because Dapple and Zap have gotten sufficiently buffed. They're in pretty good spots, especially if Pen gets a slightly further nerf. But, look at all these other Cooler weapons we put in the game. What about a 96 buff? How about we make it so this weapon paints under itself in, more than 5 shots? 5 shots is kind of insane, so that we can give our support weapon more of it. You get the point, right? Why don't we balance the game so that more of these are viable? Or just not even viable, more of these are, at a similar balance level. Because if I'm being honest, I think this problem would be alleviated if more of the Cooler weapons saw competitive use. More importantly, if it was easier to build around Cooler weapons. Because if you want to be, very optimistic, you can make the argument that Zap, Dapple, Try, and Edit, and Rapid, if I didn't mention already, and maybe even 96, are all viable options. I think Dynamo and H3 are the only ones where you really have to stretch your definition of viable in order to say they fit it. But you could make the argument that all the others could be used. But the problem is, it's not about could they be used, it's how easy is it to implement. The real reason that Pencil is so much more common than every other Cooler weapon right now, even when there are alternate Pencil-less comps at that power level, is it's way easier to run this. To build a comp, to run the rolls around it, everything, it's so much easier to just pick it. And until that changes, this being this common isn't going to change. And again, I don't have a problem with Pencil, really. I think Pencil is a very well-designed weapon for this game. My problem is that this is the only Cooler weapon we're really seeing. So, if the endgame really is that Cooler is supposed to be this common mandatory special, if we're really going to go into the end of the game and Cooler isn't going to be nerfed and it's going to maintain the spot it's in right now, I really hope we end up with a few more weapons that are actually good enough to be used commonly. That, to me, is, I think, the real problem. But, that's heavily opinionated. So, what do you guys think? Do you think Cooler being, near mandatory is a problem? Or do you think it's just about the weapons that are good at the end of the day, like I do? Let me know, and I'm interested to hear what you have to say.